Let's just go down the rabbit hole here for a second. Let's just assume this is some sort of adversarial or foreign technology.
Most of the more than 120 incidents over the past 2 decades are not from the U.S. military or other advanced U.S. government technology.
It's right in front of me, it just disappears. Disappears. Like gone.
To be clear, he's referring to this giant object as a tic tac, as he said it was shaped like one.
We're in, that we don't know what these things are, and they might even be extraterrestrial. That's worse.
Witnesses report seeing a large blue object fall out of the sky and into the ocean.
Something is in the sky.
The idea of UFOs and USOs might not be such a big deal across the planet, but when you live next to the largest body of water, the Pacific Ocean, and you've been in it and out of it and close to it for most of your life, UFOs and USOs are a regular conversation here in Hawaii.
A mystery is unfolding in Westerly. A strange circular object has been discovered under the water at East Beach, and no one has any idea what it is.
The ability for an object to fly not only in our atmosphere, low and high altitudes, but also potentially in a vacuum environment like space and even underwater.
Behind me is Long Island Sound, which is fed in by the Atlantic Ocean. Now, throughout history, we've seen many documentations and reports about UFOs over this particular coast and many others. But what about USOs? With their transmedium capabilities, with their supercavitation technology, this is a very interesting subject that doesn't get enough light shed on it. Now, is that because we just don't have the technology at bay and it's not us? Is this because possibly we just don't have enough information about this particular phenomenon? I believe that there are many documents that are being suppressed, especially in the way of USOs, and for this reason, with underground bases as possibly their stopping point, there may be some logic to this decision.
My name is Preston Dennett. I'm a UFO researcher. I've been studying this subject for about 35 years, written almost 30 books and more than 100 articles on this subject. And one area I have focused a lot of my research on is USOs, unidentified submersible objects. You could also call these transmedium craft, meaning they can travel through both the air and the water, different mediums. Officially, the military does not have any transmedium craft, though there are documents dating to the 1950s and 60s that show that the US military was interested in developing what they would call a flying submarine, a craft that can move in and out of the water. But officially, we don't have anything like this. Now, the ETs do, and in fact, there are a number of reports of objects that can fly through the air, go into the water, and come out of it. They can travel through both the air and the water with ease. These are transmedium objects, USOs. But what's interesting about USOs and transmedium objects is there's not a lot of coverage on this subject. And I'm not really sure why. This particular area of ufology has not gotten a lot of attention. Very few researchers have looked into it. which is strange because I got cases of USOs, objects coming into the water and going out of the water, very early on in my research. I've written about many such cases. In fact, I do have a book that focuses solely on these type of incidents. Yet we don't get a lot of news coverage about this, and I think there are probably a number of reasons for that. One is that these reports are far more rare than regular UFO sightings. I mean, compared to UFO encounters, of which there are many hundreds of thousands, incidents of USOs and transmedium vehicles are relatively rare. I think that's one reason. Another is because they are so unusual that perhaps people have been reluctant to speak about them. For whatever reason, USO accounts of transmedium vehicles, have not gotten their fair share of attention, at least not until recently. Now, people are beginning to wake up. There's a lot more attention being paid towards the USO phenomena, which I'm happy to see because these cases are unusual. And I think they have a lot to say about UFOs and their capabilities. These objects apparently must have some sort of force field around them that allows them to fly into the water at high speeds, to move underwater at high speeds. And this says a lot about how advanced their technology is.
They described it as completely silent with the lights on, and they saw these large stadium-like lights that were pointing down and traveling across the skyline of the coral.
I don't know if you'd call it an interest, but there seems to be a connection with water.
Well, here we are at the Gulf of Mexico, where many sightings have been seen throughout history. One notably was Ed Walters back in the 80s. He, along with many other people, witnessed lights in the sky. Approximately a couple hundred people saw what he saw, but he actually was the guy who got the clearest photos of all. And here in the Gulf, there are just many, many sightings. And it's truly one of the best places to go if you ever want to see any UFOs.
People have explained that they've seen things mysteriously rise and fall into the Pacific Ocean throughout the island chain. It's amazing the local connection between the USOs and UFOs. People are excited about it. Just recently, Honolulu had its own sighting of what looked to be a blue UFO entering the Pacific Ocean.
Hey, look up there. Let's see what I see. They all said, yeah.
The 38-year-old says she's never really been a believer in UFOs, but the bright blue object had them so intrigued, they jumped in the car and started following it.
I don't know what it was. This one was going so fast.
The journey ended less than 3 miles from where it began, on Farrington Highway in front of the Board of Water Supply building, after the object appeared to drop into the ocean.
Months before that, we received our Psionics night vision camera, and we're so lucky enough to keep our eye on the Hamakua coast right out here one night, and we noticed something glowing, something rather large. We pulled out the Psionics and managed to get a good look at whatever this anomalous glowing object was. It put out some kind of fog, a hue of light that I've never seen before. Some people might say that they're squid boats. In all my life, I've never heard of a squid boat here along the Hamakua coast. We asked around. They don't do any of that kind of fishing with these lights on boats trying to attract squids. No, this was something different.
Or the line in the water, whatever it is.
She described it as being larger than a telephone pole and says she never heard it make any sound.
We called 911 if I have like one cop or somebody for come out and come check them out.
While officers were on scene, she says they spotted a second light.
My husband will look up and he seen the white one coming. The white one was smaller, was coming in the same direction as the blue one.
For years, we've had many different accounts of things coming out of our oceans and our waters at large, whether they be lakes, rivers, or otherwise. Possibly our own technology at the helm, as many of us have surmised, or there could be something more terrestrial at play. People often talk about extraterrestrials or other beings or races that are similar to us and just assume that they come from outer space. What if some of these species were actually coming within our cavernous Earth? I'm not suggesting necessarily that the entire Earth is hollow, the way that Admiral Byrd may have suggested, but it is possible that some groups from possibly the days of Atlantis, Lemuria, or other civilizations that met catastrophic ends actually did retreat into the Earth with their technology and have been developing it alongside possibly spiritual affect for years.
One aspect of USOs that we almost never hear about are submarines that have perhaps captured a USO. Of course, this would be very difficult to do. Submarines, as advanced as they are, do not have the ability to pull an underwater craft on board. Certainly they've captured them on sonar. Certainly there are many submarine UFO, USO incidents in which USOs have been detected moving around submarines. But as far as actually capturing one, a USO crash retrieval, we don't have a lot of those. There was allegedly a USO that was captured during the Battle of Los Angeles in 1941. According to government documents, a USO crashed into the water off the Pacific coast outside of Los Angeles and was recovered by the US military. But submarines are pretty much primitive compared to the abilities of the USOs, which can basically swim circles around our most advanced ocean-going craft.
Now, as far as UFOs go in the Gulf of Mexico, there are plenty of sightings to go over. There's so many I can't even count. It's been going on for centuries over there. I think it has to do with being in the Gulf itself, not in the Atlantic or Pacific, where it's much, much more open and deeper waters. But there's something special about the Gulf of Mexico. Actually, a couple of years ago, there was an incredible sighting. There was an offshore supply vessel in the Gulf, and the captain claims he saw a UFO 5 times the size of his own vessel, which would make it approximately a quarter of a mile long.
Just a few weeks ago, the Navy admitted for the first time that several UFO videos were real, meaning they show actual area phenomenon that so far the Pentagon cannot explain.
That the referenced photos and videos were taken by Navy personnel. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations.
Now take a close look at this video. It's getting national attention. Some Navy pilots believe they spotted a UFO just off the coast of Jacksonville.
The UFO encounter occurred in the Gulf of Mexico, approximately 80 miles from, well, southeast of New Orleans. And according to the OSV chief engineer who submitted the info of the sighting to the National UFO Reporting Center, he says that close to 7 p.m. on March 21st, just before dusk, himself and 4 other crew members aboard the vessel saw a craft that appeared to be 5 times larger than their vessel. The line of sight he had was about a quarter of a mile from their boat, but there was a rig behind the craft about a half a mile. He said he used that to help gauge the size of the craft. The scene lasted about 40 seconds. The craft rose up out of the water about 40 feet, said he couldn't see any water dripping off of the UFO, and within a split second, he said as fast as it was turning off a light in a room, it was gone. And this isn't abnormal, according to many captains out in the Gulf or in the Pacific or Atlantic or any ocean.
Interviewing people on the Big Island throughout the state, it seems like there's a lot of mass sightings here on the islands itself. People have told us strange accounts. What they see is something that whisks by. They say it's almost transparent, almost like a gossamer. You can basically see through it. It's strange. They say it almost seems like it came from the ocean itself.
You see the light off the...
Oh yeah, it's hitting something. It's searching for something out there. Wow.
Look at this.
Look, it's just stalled out there. Blake, do you see that? This huge light transmits a beam down to the ocean and it lights it up. Whatever this object was, we could tell that it was large. This wasn't no helicopter or drone. This was something much, much bigger. We see some kind of flashing indicators. Yes, it could be military, but whatever it was large and just hovered there silently for just a moment and then traversed off out of view. Whatever's going on in our Pacific Ocean and along the coast of the island chain is amazing. USOs, they're no mystery out here. They're real.
Our own submarines cannot travel officially, at least, much in excess of 50 knots or so. That's the official story. However, I have learned from unofficial sources, from people within the military-industrial complex, that we do have a technology that allows us to move a little bit faster than that. We have degaussing technology, we have supercavitation technology, which basically degaussing is sort of hiding or mitigating the magnetic field that surrounds a ocean-going craft. And submarines are all about trying to remain hidden. And it's my understanding that we do have technology that has advanced in this area. Supercavitation is basically creating a field around a submarine that allows it to move more quickly in the water than it otherwise would. And I have been told from sources that are in a position to know that we have advanced with supercavitation technology far greater than what is publicly revealed. And what's interesting about USOs, trans-medium extraterrestrial vehicles, is they absolutely have this technology. There are several accounts in which USOs are traveling under the water at not a couple of 100 miles per hour, but just as quickly as they are seen moving in the sky, thousands of miles per hour. So it's clear that they have the ability to exert some kind of force field around them that pushes the water molecules away and allows them to move at super high speeds. We don't know how they do this. It probably does have something to do with the electromagnetism, anti-gravity technology, as this is how most UFOs are apparently powered. Certainly this is what contactees have been told. At any rate, this is the secret to transmedium vehicles, to USOs, is their very advanced understanding of the electromagnetic spectrum, gravitational waves, and their ability to sort of push water molecules out of the way so that they can move underwater at super high speeds. And we know this is something they can do because we have got many reports of objects coming down out of the sky at very high speeds and diving into the water and not making much of a splash at all. Whereas any kind of craft we have that would move at that speed would be blown into a million bits. And there are many reports of objects coming out of the water. And there are a few scattered reports of objects being seen going into the water and out of the water during the same incident. So the point is, this is something the ETs have learned how to do, and we apparently have not.
As time goes on, we may have more information about USOs at large, but in the meantime, they remain somewhat of a nebulous subject. Now, with this enigma on our hands, We're going to continue to watch for UFOs, as well as other objects that don't seem to be in their natural environment or don't fit some sort of status quo that we're familiar with in the way of science.
These things are everywhere. And something about the water has a special attraction, maybe a need. Maybe it's where they live. I mean, for all we know, with only knowing about 5% of our ocean, it's possible that's where they hide or even live. ACOT's president, Juan Carlos Ramon Lopez Diaz, claims to have visited the base, known as Amupac, via astral projection. And he says that Ciudad Madero suffered 4 direct landfalls in the 20th century, including Hurricane Inez in 1996, which killed 74 people. Lopez and his allies believe that the base was established sometime after a 1966 hurricane, which was Inez, that killed 74 people in Mexico alone. So he thinks the aliens built a structure under the water that can divert hurricanes. I mean, you have to admit, if that's true, then the aliens are helping us. Hey, anything's possible.
They lost sight of the object after it passed over a nearby mountain. This morning, we asked Honolulu police if investigators figured out what fell in the water. A spokesperson told us they didn't have any information. Meanwhile, officials from the FAA said they received a report from police Tuesday night about a possible plane down in the area, but had no aircraft disappear off radars and no reports of overdue or missing aircraft.
Some people almost say that it looks biological, some of these craft that are caught along the coast right behind me. What is it? It's very interesting. Could the military be doing secret testing hidden along the cliffs of the coast of the Hamakua? It's very easy to hide UFOs here. Basically, there's no people or homes along the vicinity for 30 miles. If you're gonna stretch this whole place, this would be a prime spot to do your UFO testing.
Wow, that's like a UFO bar.
Although Mariah's had a couple days to think about it, she says she's still baffled by what she saw.
To this day, I don't know. If you guys can find out what it was, I'll let you know, you know what I mean?
Allison Blair, Hawaii News Now.
Although UFO sightings are plentiful in Long Island Sound and ultimately the Atlantic Ocean, USO sightings are scarce. There's the submarine base in Groton, Connecticut, and Montauk used to harbor subpens as well. Plum Island is a biological testing facility, all of which may lure the interest of those creating this technology. Along the East Coast, we find USO sightings peppered amongst the surf, stories that toss in the waves as readily as we toss them under tongue, eager to comprehend what we've witnessed.
USOs are seen all over the world. The East Coast does have some pretty significant accounts. I know there was a wave of USO sightings off the coast of North Carolina in the 1990s. A very interesting USO account on the East Coast comes from a gentleman I interviewed personally by the name of Ray Sachs, who was an electrician's mate on the USS Clamagore. This is a Navy submarine which carried nuclear-tipped torpedoes. And according to Ray, in 1971, one evening, the Clamagore was traveling up the East Coast on the surface at about 12 knots. He was on watch with another petty officer. The commander was also on the deck, as was the second in command, when a USO showed up. It came zooming up to the USS Clamagore at about 100 knots from the stern and began to pace the Clamagore right alongside it. This was a very bright, round, white light underwater. They couldn't tell quite how large, 50 feet, 100 feet, but it was very close to their submarine, far too close for it to be any conventional submarine or other object. Caused great concern. This did not appear on sonar. And one by one, the higher ranking officers came up on deck because they also wanted to take a look at this. And this USO paced the USS Clamagore for a good 15 minutes before darting off at about 85 knots in another direction. It's a very interesting USO case, which was apparently not recorded in the official log. According to Ray Sachs, the second in command asked the commander, "Sir, how would you like me to write this down in the log?" And the commander told the second in command, "Officers who record this kind of incident in the log do not move up in rank." So this is what we see often in USO reports and in UFO reports, particularly with the Navy. There is no paper trail. Many of these events are not physically recorded. So any estimates of how many USO accounts there actually are probably vastly underestimated. I'm guessing there's a lot more than the small handful of cases that we know about.
In a world where the possibilities are still unknown, we often look up to space and wonder, where is everybody? We sometimes have to look in our own backyard and wonder, what was the past like? Will we ever dig up any artifacts and find new technology that can lead us towards our brothers and sisters on other planets? Are they right next door at the moon? Are they sitting in Mars? Are they something we just don't understand? One day we'll get an answer, and we'll find out that they're not too much different from what we are. But if we look up in the sky and wonder what that day would be like, I imagine it wouldn't look too much different than this.
It's spinning, bro. You got that spin, and then you got like a magnetic force in the bottom where you can see hot. So this UFO, it was spotted like a 1 mile from the coastline from Playuela, and I lost it for about 10 miles northeast of Desecheo. The video goes for about 10 minutes, but it won't let me load it up in WhatsApp. So you be your own judge. Make your own judgment. I don't know.
Now let's take it out to Rich. Rich from GoofOn, what's your thoughts on this?
This looks pretty good, guys. I got it up on the big screen here, and what I see is an object that has a tic-tac shape to it, and it's FLIR video. It looks like it's close to the water, and then it starts to take off slowly and gradually. Now I was thinking this must be an airplane or a drone or something like that, but I don't see it being an airplane because it's going way too slow. And a drone probably wouldn't show up on FLIR as being all hot. The whole thing is hot. Of course, there's no experts in the field of ufology, so nobody could really tell how a tic-tac should look under FLIR, because the evidence we get is so grainy, and we're taking words of people that normally we wouldn't have trusted in the past. So, and nothing really matches up to what we're being told. In this one, you can hear the guy talking, you can feel that he doesn't know what it is. He watched it, and then it left for a while, and then he recaptured it again. So that's pretty interesting that he was able to relocate it and focus in on it and follow it. So it was around for a while, and I don't know the history of this guy, but I'm sure if he's using a FLIR camera at night that he knows what he's looking at. If it was a plane or a drone, I think he would know that and he wouldn't spend all this time, because it is a 10-minute video, but he was only able to upload the highlights and I guess the file was too big. So here we are again with an object that looks like a Tic Tac. It acts like a Tic Tac. It's going very slow. It does resemble maybe a drone, but the only reason I'm saying it's not a drone, because I think the guy would know better. I think he would probably hear it. It doesn't look like, I think he said it was a mile off the coast. So there's a lot of what ifs with this, but I like the fact that, we see it, kind of wobbling, which, you want to say drone, 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 but I don't think the entire drone would be heated up like that. It just doesn't look like a drone that way. I've seen drones on FLIR footage before, and you can tell it's a drone. I think this might be a legitimate Tic Tac UFO. And if I'm wrong, boy, then show me. I mean, that's why we put these up. We want you to help us out, since, it's in another country, whatever, some things are just harder to get to research. But this one is kind of impressive looking, and it's going slow. I don't know, guys. I'm leaning towards that this might be a legitimate UFO. Then again, we're talking about FLIR video, so I don't know the details of it, but maybe someday we will. It's good stuff.
I appreciate your insight, Rich. It's pretty incredible footage. It would be cool if it was a little clearer, but we take what we can get, and it's a lot better than some of this military footage that's been coming out, but this is captured by civilians. We have civilian fishermen capturing anomalies. Why isn't the major media, sharing this kind of stuff? Now let's take it out to the UK. Ollie, Alien Addict, what's your thoughts?
This is interesting. It's got no wake in the water whatsoever. That's the most compelling thing about this. Not the fact that it takes off, because if it had a wake and it's FLIR footage, I'd say that that's an aeroplane of some kind. Small, radio control, or really far out in the distance, an aeroplane. You just can't see the wings. And when you look at FLIR footage, you really can't usually see the wings of an aeroplane. But it's the fact that there is no wake. What's really interesting about this footage is that there is no wake. You can't see any wake whatsoever in the water as this thing takes off. If there was a wake, I'd say that's an aeroplane, hands down. What I want to see is people posting FLIR footage to Thirdphaseofmoon, to Alien Addict, showing an actual wake in FLIR footage that's that far away, that you can see a visible wake. Because there is no wake. Without a wake, that says to me that is backing up what these people are saying about zero inertia, and that these things don't affect the water whatsoever. It does move the same as an airplane, though, as it takes off gradually. There's just no wake. When there's no wake, it's a UFO. As in unidentified flying object. I'm not going to call it UAP. I refuse to do that. But it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Because we've got loads of FLIR footage now. We've got a little bit more now. But only this one's, I think it's slightly better than some of the rest of them. Only because there's no wake. But would we see a wake? That's what I'm asking myself. I need to see more FLIR footage of aeroplanes taking off out of water and see if you can see a wake. If you can see a wake, then we know what that is. That's an aeroplane. If we can't see a wake, then that's a Tic Tac taking taken off out of the water. Also, why is it filmed on FLIR footage? People, stop doing this. You know, it's bad enough that we get the military stuff. When the civilians are doing it, you know, just use normal color. You know, I want to see the UO. I want to see the shiny goodness of it. It's interesting, but is it a UFO? Well, it's a UFO because it's unidentified. That's about it. Apart from that, if we can see wakes in FLIR footage, very visible wakes, you might have something there. Interesting.
Appreciate your thoughts there, Alien Addict. You know, it's insane what's going on. It seems like UFOs, meta-propulsion vehicles, it's all on the rise right now. So we're having our eyes open. Let's take it out to Dark Hour Paranormal. Michael, what's your thoughts here?
While I do really enjoy this video, I'm not terribly keen on the fact that it isn't first-hand footage in the way that it's being captured. Now, maybe there's some sort of logical or rational explanation as to why they decided to put it on a computer screen and then film it from that, but at any rate, it makes it a little bit more difficult to analyze the footage. Now, we don't necessarily know between country to country what we have in terms of technology, or at least there hasn't been anything confirmed in that respect. So, for all we know, the United States has a set of its technology that we would consider high technology. Russia has one, China has one, and of course these go along in different programs, and perhaps some of the secrecy in between the margins, if you will, where we can't really connect any of these, is based on the militarization and secrecy of these particular objects. So in the video, we're privy to witness what appears to be some sort of disc gliding across the water. I assume it's pretty large, can't tell exactly how big, just because the cameraman is far away enough that we can sort of ascertain that at least. And then at one point it begins to ascend right off of the water. Now, the person filming then switches into a heat signature, which gives it a little bit more clarity. And one of the interesting things that we hear him mention is that he believed he saw some sort of electromagnetic field underneath it registering in the way of heat. Now, without any modern or conventional way to propel this thing into the air, no sound associated with it as far as we could tell from the video, we're again looking at some sort of super propulsion or perhaps a super cavitation element that's associated with this craft. Now, let's just play another card for a moment here. Let's say this isn't our craft and it is actually belonging to some sort of extraterrestrial species. Now, we understand that at least there is a theory that perhaps these extraterrestrials are here studying and observing us. But what if they were here actually studying our entire ecosystem and perhaps all the animals within? And that's why we're seeing them in such abundance at this period of time, wherein they're more brazen. It's like not looking behind your back, in a sense. It's an idea, but in my heart of hearts, I think the majority of what we're seeing, probably at least 80 to 85% in our skies, is ours and belongs to our species as some sort of back-engineered technology or some sort of technology that may have been a derivative of something recovered in some sort of event in the past. So either way, this is a fantastic clip. I really enjoy the authenticity of the person who's recording it. He says it's spinning at one point. We can't really make that out so well, but this is what he's claiming. And again, he really leaves it up to us to decide what it is we're witnessing in the sky that day.
Now, let's take it out to my brother, Brent. Brent's been standing by. He's on assignment, but we're going to take it out to him, and I want to get Brent's thoughts. What's going on with this FLIR shot?
All right, we're here on the coast on Hamakua, kind of doing an example, kind of an experiment to see what this person captured across the ocean. He did say this was about a mile out at sea, so I'm kind of adjusting, kind of looking on how much a mile would be. It'd almost be about a thumb's length at the bottom of the crest of the ocean right there. And if you adjust just a little bit down, I would estimate that being about a mile out. You would not see a conventional drone at this distance. It would just be too hard to see. Now let's ask the question, what could it be? This thing, if you look at it, it's doing these strange maneuvers. You could kind of see it just hover along the ocean. And it would be kind of difficult for a plane to create lift at that moment just because it's so close to the surface. But then again, you see this thing just kind of bank up, hold a position, and then it kind of does these awkward moves that really don't represent your average drone. You could almost say maybe this is military, some sort of new tech. I'm thinking this thing would be probably about 20 to maybe 30 feet. Not your typical small sized drones like a MAV or something like that. This thing's huge. What's the technology behind it? We've been seeing these FLIR videos kind of coming up these past couple weeks, and I'm gonna say this is better than what we've seen recently by some drops in people that you know in the field. This one has a little bit more clarity, and it gives us kind of more of a dimension on what's really happening out there. Why is this captured on FLIR, some people might say? Really, it doesn't matter what camera it's captured on, as long as they're actually capturing evidence. So a lot on the table. We got even more UFO videos coming in from around the world. So we're gonna make another episode a little bit later tonight, and hopefully we can put it up earlier this morning. But right now, there's so many UFO sightings on the rise, and they're being captured everywhere. So the times are exciting. People, if you've captured anything amazing, submit it to us right here. Breakfast wants to see your videos. We all want to see your videos from around the world, so send it to us. My contact, my email is in the description below. This is Third Phase Moon. Blake Cousins, keep your eyes on the skies, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Let's just go down the rabbit hole here for a second. Let's just assume this is some sort of adversarial or foreign technology.
Most of the more than 120 incidents over the past 2 decades are not from the U.S. military or other advanced U.S. government technology.
It gets right in front of me, it just disappears. Disappear. Like gone.
To be clear, he's referring to this giant object as a tic tac, as he said it was shaped like one.
We're in, that we don't know what these things are and they might even be extraterrestrial, that's worse.